A couple days ago, I placed my order at U-Join Off-Road for my suspension parts, and that means the hunt for axles is on. The search for axles was on. I hopped online to search Craigslist on our local classifieds, but I couldn't find anything that met my criteria, so I decided to work on the van in the meantime. Today's modification is removing all these seat brackets because we're not going to be using seats back here. It's funny how the little things excite you when you get a new car, like removing the seat brackets or changing the windshield wiper blades. I really like the idea of reusing this hardware. Remember, this van came with the roof rack. Well, when I started inspecting it, there were tons of gouges and even rust spots on the roof, especially in the rain gutter areas. We went down to Jones Paint and Glass, our local auto body paint shop, and they were able to mix perfect spray paint to match this in a spray can. It's 25 bucks a can. It was really fun to watch them do it. They put it in this big plunger and then plunged it down into the can. It's a one-stage paint, so I don't need to top coat it, don't need to clear coat it. Since this is a van that's going to see off-road use and it's on the roof, we don't need a professional job. That being said, it looks really, really good. Usually where you see the most rust on cars is in the rocker panels behind the front wheel, and this car's no exception. So the more I started grinding away, the more I realized how bad Fred's cancer was. The rust had been bondoed over. It looked terrible. So I'm going to learn how to do sheet metal repair. I think I can handle the welding. I've never done much forming. I'm excited to try that, but I want to make sure I cut out all the rust so that doesn't ever become a problem again. After that, I hopped back online to see if any axles had popped up. Nope. So I did what anyone else with ADD would do. I started another project. I decided to replace all the van's speakers. This is what I went with, JBL GTO 8628. They're 6x8s or 5x7s, however you want to say it. It works in both. Ford's kind of goofy. They use 6x8s instead of 6x9s, but whatever. I picked these because they were 50 bucks and they had good reviews on Amazon, and because I had a 10-speaker JBL system in my 4Runner that I absolutely loved. So hopefully this sounds somewhat good. We'll see. The inside door handle that you use to pull the door shut was coming loose. That was really easy. There's 4 screws. 2 on this side and 2 on this side. They used about a half turn to a full turn each, so that'll be nice to have a solid door handle again. Now that I put this plate on, this would be a great place for a tweeter. I think there'd be a lot of room there for that. Done. Back to the axle search. My buddy Chance recommended I talk to a local fabricator, Mitch, at Unlimited Fabrication. I gave Mitch a call, and sure enough, he had just the axle I needed. The next day, I headed over to UFab. Unlimited Fabrication is an incredible place. Mitch builds tools to make more tools. He can pull axle tubes out of center sections, rotate things. He can do things I hadn't even heard of before. And not only is his shop amazing, he has one of the most amazing Jeeps in the state as well. It was great catching up with Mitch and checking out his shop again. But we were both pressed for time, so we hurried outside to load the axle. This axle is a beast. I don't know what it weighs, but my guess is around 500 pounds. Mitch gave me the axle for a great price, and it was just what I needed. He also loaned me some wheels and tires so I could push this axle around. My work at Unlimited Fab was done, and it was time to head home. A few months ago, Tess and I sold our house and gave up our 2-car garage. As we embrace a more minimalist life, this poses a problem when working on a vehicle. Fortunately, our landlord is kind enough to let us work on this van in the back cement pad. I still had one big problem. How was I going to get that 500-pound axle out of my trailer? And then I remembered my neighbor Joe and his cherry picker. Joe is the nicest guy you will ever meet. And he has some cool tools. And he has a cool Jeep Scrambler. Joe's a great guy to have around. It was such a relief to finally have a front axle, even if it did look like it was recovered from the Titanic. Even though the axle was rusty, the important parts were there. This came out of a 2002 F250 with 80,000 miles. You know how I feel about rust, so out came the wire wheel. ADD strikes again. I decided that disassembling the axle sounded like a lot more fun than removing rust. The calipers were completely rusted to the rotors, and these weren't going anywhere. I bought the axle with the intention of completely rebuilding it anyway, so it doesn't really matter if I damage these parts. In the past, I've done a lot of work on Suzukis and Toyotas, but this was the first time I'd ever seen a Dana axle up close. There was a lot to learn, but it didn't look too complicated. Getting the manual hub dial off was a piece of cake, but snap rings are my nemesis. I tried all the tricks I knew, but I could not get that thing out. Ultimately, it required a second pair of hands, and Tess was able to help me get it out. It was Friday night, and I got as much done as I could on the axle. Tomorrow I would have all day to work on it. Today's goal is to strip the whole axle down, except for the ring and pinion gears, and prep it, wire wheel it, paint the main axle part, and then the knuckles and other little parts, and slowly put it back together. So today, I don't expect it to be all back together, but I do expect the main part to have all the rust gone and be painted. The chickens thought that was a pretty funny goal. And in hindsight, maybe it was a bit too ambitious. That always scares me. At first I was intimidated by the sheer size of all the components on this axle. But once I got into it, it wasn't that bad. It was a huge mental milestone for me to get one side completely stripped down to the axle C. Yay, this side is torn apart. The U-joint kit requires you to cut off the factory track bar mount. It was in the way anyway, so I was more than happy to remove it. A plasma cutter would have been a much more appropriate tool for the job, but I don't have one. With the track bar and the tie rod off, the axle was cleaning up nicely. It's been a long day, but I finally got the axle completely stripped. We still have the spider gears and the ring and pinion gears in here, but the rest has completely been removed. I'm going to hit the whole thing with the wire wheel and prep it for paint. Next time, we pick up a new rear axle, go shopping, and receive our first package from U-Joint.